I'm Vin.
I'm Sorry.
Sorry is, her name is also, Suffering. I'm Vin. I'm Suffering. But we continue on because we are determined to get you guys a constant stream of metal goodness in the midst of the apocalypse. And we're doing Flesh God Apocalypse, the Violation. This is from the, what is this, the XU?
Yeah.
The Extreme Underground. That's a Patreon alliance. It's $1 at the gate at Patreon, and then you get pulled into an alliance, which is basically genre specific. And then you go and make your case, and whoever made the case for Flesh God Apocalypse won this time, and so here we have the Violation. For timely topical political commentary, you can hit us up in Middle America with Vinny and Sorry. I know that Bernie just stepped down today. I don't even know if I'm going to shoot a video on it. The other side of it is I pretty much feel like I've said everything that I could say about it, because I had predicted that I had pretty much buried Bernie after Super Tuesday.
Yep.
So it was already over in my mind at that point. So there's really nothing new I can say about it. But there you go. So Flesh God Apocalypse. I've actually, when I saw the song on the list, I was actually very, very interested in seeing what it would all be about. So, yeah, I'm actually pretty interested here. Flesh God Apocalypse, The Violation, Extreme Underground, Patreon Alliance. Shout out to all of our beautiful people in the village. Let's do it.
Go.
Whoa. Ominous.
You're gonna die tonight. Scary sound.
I wonder if the guitars are going to reflect that. Whoa.
Wow.
That was freaking an ambitious song.
Yeah.
That was
I really like the
very,
beginning.
very ambitious song. Yeah, sonically, they were definitely. I don't know. This is the first time I've heard this band before, so I don't know if all their songs are like this, as far as like the symphonic operatic stuff, but man, this was pretty crazy as far as like. Again, this is one of those things that metal can do that hip hop. I don't know. I don't want to say hip hop can't do or hasn't like tried to even attempt to. The symphonic stuff and like to go over the top with the imagery and all that. I don't think you see that in hip hop, which I think is a miss on hip hop's part, because I do think like Biggie was the type of rapper that could really paint a scene lyrically. And if there was a project like that on the hip hop side, I think a guy like Biggie could pull it off. I think Cool G Rap could have pulled it off, because those are the two probably best storytellers, lyricists out there, in my opinion. So I think I wish hip hop would venture into it, but anyway, metal seems to like jump into it full bore. You've seen Metallica do it. We've seen.
Oh yeah, a bunch.
There was a black metal band there was a couple black metal bands that were doing the symphonic stuff. It's just amazing stuff. What did you think the song was about?
I don't know. I was just listening to the sounds of what they did with it. I kind of sounded they were talking about sin at one point of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were trying to escape the sin that they did, or I'm not really sure.
It looks to be about human sacrifice.
I have a major headache, so.
It's human sacrifice where it looks like one of those
human sacrifice? Is that what you just said?
Yeah. Like it looks like one of those burn the virgin rituals.
Good Lord.
Her profanation's ready, the sacrifice is on its way. The resonating screams arise until she dies in her own blood. She's drowning down. You can't escape from your own nature, forever who you are.
Wow.
So it looked, sharpening blades and dreams of terror. Your fury is what you are, increasing lust of a living hate again and again in a physical pain. Yeah, wow. So it's she dies at the end. All her dreams, she feels lost, facing insanity.
Facing the insanity.
Destiny won't forgive the one who led to the unmerciful fate. So she dies, but it looks like the people that killed her in this sacrificial ritual end up being tormented forever, because it says, for this crime you'll be trapped in our cage, and again you'll be slave to rage. We will impose a sentence of your death for your demise while you beg for a mercy denied.
Wow.
We'll be deaf and our purification will be blind. This violation will condemn to die. So they, whoever they are, maybe it's their gods, pray all your gods to be saved. You cannot liberate your wicked soul from the dread of a tragical fate.
God, wow,
so
that's terrible.
Our Inquisition is coming to punish your life. The sound of the scream makes you mad. The sin is done. So it looks like,
It's interesting. So they're calling the sacrificing of this woman a sin?
Yeah. They're saying it's a.
Remember that Vikings episode?
Yeah, where the
sacrifice.
Yeah, the guy died, and then the Viking woman was selected to like
Yeah.
like accompany him to Valhalla or something like that, and he killed her and all this.
I don't remember the details. I just remember her dying and everybody being around, and it was like.
It's very interesting. The concept of human sacrifice to appease the gods is a very, very old one. I just saw, it was like last year, I saw this Incan or Mayan, it was these two kids, and they were basically like, they were left on a mountain to die basically as a sacrifice to the gods, and they had they juiced them up with this concoction to, like, it was like some sort of opiate or whatever.
Yeah.
And so they were completely perfectly preserved, because they basically froze to death or whatever. But
I remember reading about, it was like a newspaper clipping about this girl, and she was like, it was like a similar thing. I think they had hit her in the head and then threw her off the cliff, and then she was frozen still, like.
Yeah.
But she was like, they could tell so much about her by what was left of her. Oh, that was really disturbing to me, because I was pretty young at the time, and I was trying to process the fact, like, how scared she must have been, and like, she had a family. Did the family know for all time that she was going to be a sacrifice, or did it hit a certain age where it was like, oh, I guess we're going to have to sacrifice
Yeah,
you? Like,
there was
there not enough rain? Was there,
Exactly. There was some sort of lottery or something where, because, a lot of it had to do with there are these forces that human beings cannot control.
Yeah.
And so for the collective psychology of the community, they came up with this idea that if we were to give up something that's the most important to us, then that will appease the gods. And then it really didn't appease the gods at all. From our perspective, what it did was give the community a sort of psychological, touch point that said, we are in control of this somehow. Because we did this sacrifice, we are now in control of this situation. So,
right. Well,
if that didn't happen, then you'd have had mass pandemonium, and more people actually would have died, because as we've seen, when people go into mass hysteria, and they can't control things, people end up dead inevitably anyway. Like, we're even seeing this to some degree in the current situation. You've got people who are like offing themselves now because of the fact that they're cooped up in the in their house or whatever, which is something a little bit different. What were you gonna say?
Well, and maybe it's too complicated. My head is hurting, so it's hard to, like, it did appease some gods, because we believe that there's like a hierarchy of gods, and the highest god, who's in charge of the rain and all of that, was not pleased by it. But the lesser gods, they love the chaos, they love death, they love sacrifice, they love all that stuff.
Right. They love human suffering and stuff.
Right. So I think that those lesser gods, which are not the ones that can do anything about the rain, were probably pleased by those sacrifices. Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
I can't even, oh my word.
Yeah, it's
watch somebody hit my kid in the head and throw him off a cliff. I just can't even process.
Yeah. I know.
No.
I know. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. I was listening to Mike Francis, I think his name is. He's like a reformed mobster.
Yeah.
So like the guy was in the mob, like he was a made.
He's talking about jail.
He was a made man, and before he was talking about jail, he talked about these two brothers who were in the mob, and their dad violated one of the rules, and the rules was you don't do anything to anybody's wife or daughter, and the dad had been doing something with somebody else's daughter, and so the boss called the sons to kill their own father, and they did. And he was talking about, like, 20 years after it happened, he was riding with one of the guys, and he was dropping him off at his house, and he checked the door, and it was locked. And he went back, and he goes, "No, I'll just stay over at your place." And he goes, "Well, it's your house. Why don't you just get a key and go in?" He goes, "Ever since that incident happened with my dad, I can never be alone." in my house, because he swore up and down that his dad's ghost was there and was haunted. But you know, the point was, is like, this guy sacrificed his dad basically for the sake of the mob, for the mafia. And I think it was a very insightful passage right here where he talks about, after the thing happened, now you're trapped in our cage. So previously it was a girl that was trapped in the cage because she was going to be sacrificed. But after that happened, now you're trapped in our cage, the cage of the gods, I'm assuming, which is very strange, because it's like, on the one hand, it seems that the gods are demanding sacrifice, but then on the other hand, they penalize them for it and call it a sin and say, you're terrible, which is basically how the bad gods relate in the Bible, all. But it's a true thing. When you are the one that carries out those types of rituals, like, something definitely changes in you.
You know what? That's actually pretty smart in the mob's part. Have the sons do it, because if they have somebody else do it, then the sons might be upset with the other people.
Right.
It's going to cause more chaos in the ranks.
Oh yeah, I definitely see the logic, and it's absolutely brutal.
It's sick, yeah.
It's absolutely brutal.
Gosh.
You know, and you know, I didn't feel any sort of grief for the dad. You do something to somebody's daughter, I mean, you get what you get.
When he did something to somebody's daughter.
He was doing stuff with one of the guys' daughters. So that was one of the rules. And
Sexually?
Yeah.
Was the girl wanting to do that?
I mean, I don't care. Either way. I mean, he gets what he gets. So, you know. But I feel horrible. I feel horrible for the
age gap.
For the
Is she a kid
guys.
or is she a grown woman?
Honey, he wasn't going into a giant delineation. All that happened was they have these rules. He broke the rules, so he sent his kids to go kill him. And but you could just tell, like, the kid, at least one of them, was just completely, you know. And it was funny too, because
I wouldn't want to live in that house either. Would you want to live in a house you killed your parents in?
Well, I don't know if he killed his parents in that house. I don't know.
Well, it must have been his father's house.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want to live anywhere if I killed somebody in there. Like, I wouldn't even want to look at it on the map. You know what I mean? Like, so. No, I mean, obviously not. But the point is like, the person who does the killing is also making a sacrifice of themselves. Like, they both die They both die that day.
Yeah.
You know, if you have any semblance, because you're always sacrificing. You know, it's always has to be an innocent victim. It can never be like the town jerk.
Well, yeah.
Because it's like the gods don't want
sacrifice.
Yeah. So it's always got to be an innocent person. Who the majority of the time, and you see in these rituals, there's always some drug involved. Even in the crucifixion of Christ, where they tried to give him the gall mixed with myrrh to kind of make them docile, and that's why Jesus refused to take it, because he wanted to feel the full brunt of what he was about to endure.
Yeah.
But so there's always some drug, and I think that has more to do with the comfort of the executioner than it does the victim, because it's just a horrible thing to kill an innocent person who's begging and pleading for their life.
Oh, God.
It's extremely traumatic.
Well, that's why they would line them up and have a bunch of people lined up with guns, so you didn't know which one of you it came from.
Yeah. And you know, it's a very strange thing.
They're
like,
not afforded that luxury when it's crucifixion.
All through the Old Testament, though, you had these railings against human sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like, you know, God's like, that never entered in my mind. You guys did that to these babies. I'm going to send the Babylonians to destroy you because you sent my children into the fire. He says, which is one of the sacrificial rituals they used to have. Is they used to sacrifice their babies to Molech. And so all through the Old Testament, you have this sort of primer against human sacrifice, and then right in the middle of the Bible, in Isaiah 53, because you had animal sacrifices, you didn't have human sacrifices,
right?
And the animal sacrifice that would give you an atonement for your sin was called an asham. That's the Hebrew term that was called. So you have all these animal sacrifices, and then right in the middle of the Bible, he says, sacrifices and offerings, I'm not pleased with the blood of bulls and goats. And then in Isaiah 53, you have this man who's spoken of being an asham, being a guilt offering for the sins of the people. And it's just very, 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 it's a crazy twist.
Yeah.
And of course the difference is that the other human sacrifices, one is they were flawed people themselves, even though they were innocent according to human standards. They were not innocent according to God's standards. So they didn't have the capacity to die for anybody's sins anyway. And two, they were unwilling, whereas Jesus is a completely and totally willing sacrifice, and he's pure and all the rest of it. And in his sacrifice, you get liberated from the cage, and you get liberated from death and rage and all those things. The other human sacrifices put you in that. Because you're taking the life from someone, whereas Jesus says, nobody takes my life from me. I have the authority to lay it down and the authority to take it back up again. This command I have received from my Father.
Even in Jesus' sacrifice, though, the one that turned him in went crazy.
Yeah. Judas, right.
Yeah.
Right. The one who turned him in and turned him over to those people, he did. He lost his mind.
Yeah.
Which, again, continuously, when he
Or
says,
maybe
I betrayed...
he gained it back, and that's why he did it.
Right. He said, I betrayed...
That's such a, wow.
I betrayed innocent blood. And so then he in his mind, he had to pay a price for that, which is, he couldn't deal with that because he was treating it like every other human sacrifice in history, which is this song does very well with.
Yeah.
But this one, there's one human sacrifice that was different.
Yeah.
And the other, that also makes the resurrection such a powerful idea, because it's you get the concept of sacrifice and a person who absorbs the wrath of God, but at the same time you still get that happily ever after.
Right.
And so it kind of like the death and resurrection of Christ is kind of like the combining of the grimiest aspects of the quote real world and then the most like naive aspects of the fantasy world, which is everybody lives happily ever after. Like, so you have both of those like smashed together in one person, which is one of the reasons that Jesus is always such a compelling figure to me, and I feel privileged that I can believe it, because I know there's lots of people that would love to be able to believe that, and wherever they are in their journey right now they can't, but I love it because it's the gluing together of the horrible, the deepest, darkest parts of human nature and what it says about it. What it says about us, that we were willing to massacre a perfect person in the most painful way possible. What that says about human nature.
Yeah.
And then what it says about, but also says about human nature, that we keep telling these stories where people live forever in happiness after a massive conflict. And so, and it's a horrible world to believe one and not the other.
Yeah.
And that's the world where a lot of people live in, is they see death, but they don't see a resurrection. And so I feel very,
it's
very
a dark place.
I feel very privileged that I believe that with all my to the depths of my bones. I feel privileged because I get it. I understand.
Yeah, it's definitely been something I've never doubted.
Yeah.
And I think that's a major privilege, I guess you could say, to just never doubt that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that not everybody is like that. It's interesting, because remember you were talking about how people would try to use prayer as like an incantation to make it so that way you could control the gods.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing, but they took it even further. Well, then if I kill my kid, then you'll listen and you'll be obligated to do whatever it is that I need you or want you to do. But
yeah, it eventually got to the point where prayer wasn't enough, and so you kind of raise the ante. You say, okay, well, I will.
What if I do this?
Yeah, what if I pray based on the fact that I gave up this?
Yeah.
And then you'll have to hear me, And so there was that sort of quid pro quo, you could say.
Right. Too bad.
Which is so the concept of human sacrifice, continues to happen. Like even yesterday, you had the Minnesota primaries, where, these people, or some of them, we're in a situation where like everybody's like stay home, all these stay home orders, and yet here we are, go vote. Go vote.
Biden said he's like, well, there's something different. There was like some Democratic thing where there's like thousands of people in the same area or something. He's like, that's not the same thing as
the convention, right?
Going in there and doing the voting. I mean, it's the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
just because you have people 6 feet apart, people are filling these areas with their coughing and their
it's
sneezing
worse.
and their breathing
Right.
and their...
It's worse because they all have to touch one thing to vote. Like, you can go to the
Absolutely.
convention and not touch a soul.
Yeah.
Now, these people, you have to, and you're standing in line for hours, you're
Right,
outside and all the
right.
rest. In Minnesota, so it still happens where people are willing to do a human sacrifice to appease their gods, whether it's, oh, we don't want Medicare for all, we know people are going to die, but, you know, our God is money, so, you know, screw those old people, let them
Yep.
die.
Yep.
Hey, you know, yeah,
As
I
long
know.
as they get
people-
their vote before they expire.
Right, yeah. Biden, you know, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was Florida, he was like, hey, if you're not symptomatic, go vote.
No.
And now some of the poll workers have, like, it's documented, some of them have COVID, you know? So, like, it still happens in this day and age. It's just the gods are different and the method of sacrifice is different, but people are still the same. They're still willing to sacrifice human beings for their gods. And, you know,
absolutely.
it's the ultimate message
Terrible.
of the gospel is that God sacrifices himself for you. Not that you sacrificed yourself for God. That's not the way to attain salvation. The way to attain salvation is that God sacrifices himself for you. And that's supposed to end all human sacrifice in all of its forms. Whether it's, you know, economic human sacrifice, where you know there's people who are dying needlessly, but screw them, they should have had better insurance. Or whether it's, well, this baby is not developed enough yet for us to consider it a human being, which is very strange. I still, whenever people say that to me, it's always so strange. Like, what do you mean you don't consider it? Like, considering where we are historically, like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, you think you have the authority to say whether you consider something a human being or
No,
not?
who
Like, are
are
you
you?
crazy?
Who are you?
Like,
Yeah.
of course, as a black person, it you know, it wasn't 200 years ago where people didn't consider me a human being either.
Right.
It's just crazy to me. That's actually, this is going to be very controversial, but that type of statement, like, that's one of those things where, you know, growing up white in the Western world, you can say stuff like that and not realize,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know, the implications. But whatever the human sacrifice is, whether you're sacrificing, you know, black folks on the altar of, you know, the slave trade and the economic boom that obviously is going to come from it, or we sacrifice, you know, human beings so that they can vote, or we sacrifice human beings for our economy, because when you talk about, well, people are going to die, and then you hear the response, well, how are we going to pay for it? That tells you what the God priority is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I hold the positions I hold, which isn't really consistent with either right-wing Christianity or complete left-wing politics, is because of the death of Christ. Now, what pro-life means is you do everything possible to keep human life sacred, because that sacrifice has happened, so we're no longer supposed to indulge in human sacrifice. So however it manifests itself, whether you're going to sacrifice human beings in Iraq for oil or empire expansion, or you're going to sacrifice human beings in the womb for your career expansion, or you're going to sacrifice human beings in your own country for the economic God, all of those human sacrifices have to be put to an end, because there is one that took care of all of the evil of all of our cumulative human sacrifices. So I think this song is an actual very, very powerful song, and it's a haunting song, and they did a really good job with it. It's a 9.8 for me.
It's a 9.4 for me.
There you go. There you go. Love your neighbor. Wash your hands. Don't go to the polling booths. Mail in as best you can. Been out.
Sorry out.
Gone.
Forever gone.